The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar titled Dues, Events, Orders, Oh My, Web Services for All. It brings me pleasure to introduce Randy Richter and Tim Sloan to you today. Randy's a Director of Technology Solutions and a partner here at ATS, and Tim Sloan is a Senior Consultant and Implementation Specialist here at ATS. And I think you're going to find this discussion about web services interesting, really showing you how to integrate so many different platforms with iMIS, as well as take advantage of orders and dues and events and some of the other things without having to maintain costly custom code. So just a couple things to get started. As far as questions and answers, if you have questions throughout the presentation, go ahead and type those into the questions or chat box within your GoToWebinar toolbar. I'm sure Randy and Tim will probably be answering some of those throughout. If not, we can wait till the very end and ask those of them. We will be recording today's session, so if you want to refer back to what you've seen, or I know a number of people have emailed me saying, well, I'm not going to be able to attend, but I really want to see the recording. That will be on the ATS website at www.atsol.org/webinar, and I will, that's in the follow-up email that will come to all of you, and I will also post that in the chat window here shortly. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Randy and Tim to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Ben. As Ben stated, this is Tim Sloan. I'm here with Randy Richter. Well, you should see the first slide up. Let's go to the next one here. So what I want to do, just give you a quick overview how the presentation will run. Is I'm going to give you some basic information about how the web services work, why we use the web services, how we got to develop the web services, and then we can jump in with Randy, who will go a little bit more on the technical side. First off, just the idea of getting data in and out of iMIS, right? A couple ways to do that. One that we see a lot of associations do is SQL reads and writes, which as the slide says, is not sustainable. Easily breaks applications as you do upgrades, and may violate your ASI license agreement for getting that data in and out straight using the SQL reads and writes. Again, I mean, this is one of the things we run into that quite often of associations that have built an application up and running. They go to do an upgrade, and they find themselves at the last moment after that upgrade trying to fix an application or another product that's doing this direct SQL reads and writes. So what do we do, right? We're going to use the iMIS APIs. Why is that? Because they're upgradable, right? All those, they come along with, they're there, they come along with each version of iMIS, and they're easily scalable. So we kind of break things down as we look at how do we kind of break these web services out, right? And as many of you are familiar kind of with the three-layer idea, right? The presentation layer, the business layer, and the data layer, right? And again, these provide us for no direct SQL calls or API calls into your web pages, and it works with multiple or of course the single server topologies. We're looking at we've got the iMIS database. We then place the web services so that the web services talk to your iMIS application server and database, and then you can use your business layer and your presentation layer, which is usually your web pages, to communicate through those web services to reach iMIS. And again, as you can see, you can imagine that you've got your web server in one spot, your web services on another server, and your iMIS database on your SQL server. Now you're definitely separated out. If you need to be in a multiple server environment, or if you need to go down to one server, you can easily see how this would fit on one server as well. So a little bit of history of the iMIS APIs. Some of this is a little bit before my time, the COM IBOs. So Randy may want to jump on this, but those were the original, kind of API interface with iMIS that worked on the version 10 series, and then we're in the late 90s. They moved from the 10 series up to now to 20s using the .NET iMIS business objects, and that's a lot of what we use for our web services using those .NET IBOs. And also, of course, currently now there's the SOA web services, which are generally based on the .NET IBOs, and still have some limited functionality. And I know ASI is really building these out and going to move towards those. And so one of the things we do is we use a combination right now of the iBOs and the SOA web services. And as the SOA web services increase functionality, we'll transfer more and more of that from calling iBOs to calling those web services themselves.
Really, Tim, if I could jump in, the advantage there is that as ASI provides additional functionality to the SOA web services, our web service layer will take advantage of that functionality. So that's why we have one, with web services, it's one set of code that works on all versions of iMIS, and inside our web service layer, we're taking care of, is it a 10.x client, a 15.x client, or a 20.x client, and calling the appropriate underneath technology. And why that's important to you, especially if some of you are on 15 still, is that you can build your applications in 15, and when you upgrade to 20, you'll get a new version of the ATS Web Services, just have the new DLLs in them, and you won't have to change any of your code. We take care of all the differentiation about when to call iBOs, when to call SOA, and all that underneath in our code as a layer that sits on top of both of these.
Some, real quick history of the ATS Web Services. One of the things we found is that, as we were building, as many other resellers do, right, and you as clients do, right, building multiple projects, we start seeing similar bits of code that would be useful for across those projects, i.e. a member directory versus a roster, some dues projects, some ordering projects and things like that, and start realizing that there's some commonality here that we could really leverage by pulling them into one package. The biggest one is needing something upgradable. I mean, no organization stays on one version of iMIS, and nor should you. And with the way ASI is bringing out newer versions of iMIS, it's much easier now to upgrade, and you get a lot of functionality with each one of those upgrades. So really need something that made it easier for organizations with other applications to be able to talk to iMIS and not worry about, oh, I'm upgrading from 20.1.1.4 to 20.2, I've got to rewrite all my applications. What do I need to do? And so that's where really look to the ATS Web Service for that. We really started on them in about 2007, and right now we use them on every single one of our ATS projects. So when someone contracts with us and says, I need you to build me a roster or a member directory or XYZ, we first look to our web services to be able to use that data access. And because of that, not only with the improvements that's being done with, within the iMIS product as well, we also leverage some of those. So our web services are already improving, and we're adding enhancements to that to take advantage of some of the new features that are coming out in the iBOs and the SOA web services. Again, based on the iMIS business objects, and there are literally thousands of development hours committed to this project, and all of our developers here use these. So we've got quite a few eyes on how these are being used and how to improve them for other vendors or ourselves, of course, to build projects off of those.
We probably have, Tim, just checking yesterday, we probably have nearly 400 licenses out for these different web services. So this isn't 5 people using them. There are hundreds. Now, some of those are using them based on our apps that call them, but many people, including some of you on the webinar today, are using them and to build your own application.
Yes, exactly. What's the goals? It really is to provide a consistent way for developers to call the underlying iBOs, and I'll add SOA web services in there as well, right? So as you move, as you upgrade, we take care of that. So I think as Randy mentioned earlier, right, there's a call in the iBO that we're utilizing now. That call now gets moved to the SOA web service. Our web service can handle that transition internally. Your external code doesn't need to worry about where that call is made. The web services will handle that. It has allowed us. There are some bugs in the iBOs that we found, and so we have been able to address some of those within our web services. We identify something that could be could change the business logic, and the iBOs does not maybe duplicate exactly what you would find on the desktop. We will try to take the web services and have them duplicate that functionality for you, so that you expect the same thing to happen through the web services you do on the desktop. Of course, again, allows for a lot of differences in iMIS versions, right? If you're on iMIS, 15X, versus 20x. There are certain things you can do with pricing and with reg classes, things like that. You have one set of web services. That web service takes care of which version you're on. You're not needing to worry about that as much. And again, one place for all batch creation, credit card charging, etc.
Tim, if I could add one thing to this note, the one example you have here in the third bullet is a case where as the versions of iMIS had progressed, the IBOs changed the way they worked. So one time, if you were writing your own IBO code, you would say, well, I'm going to set the reg class, then I'm going to overwrite the price. Well, it come out there was one of the versions, 15.153, 8590, something like that, where it changed, and then you have to set the price first and set the reg class later. Or another example would be the event survey questions. Those were in a completely different place in 20 now.
Yeah.
Our web service that says, go get me the event questions, works whether you're on 15 or 20. We take care, if there's a method out there, we take care to make sure it's going to work correctly no matter what the underlying version is, which again helps you save code and not have to re-engineer and figure out when you upgrade, oh my gosh, what do I need to do to now get these event questions because they're in a completely different place. Right now we're in the middle of testing the 20.2 early adopters.
Literally in the middle of that.
Literally in the middle of that as we stop to take this presentation. But we're going to make sure that everything works with 20.2 and move forward. And there is some things, we'll give you one more example, with the advent of iMIS 20, you can now edit a registration and add to a registration. So again, that's a feature that we went ahead and incorporated into the web services. So if you're calling the web services to create a registration and you're on 15.1.3, it will warn you or give you a message back if you can't edit a registration. But if you use that same exact code as you upgrade to 20, it's going to work and let you edit the registration just as you can in iMIS.
Next, I just want to kind of give you some ideas of types of projects. Of course, you've got to mention the ATS Online Marketplace. The ATS Online Marketplace uses the web services extensively and solely. That is the means of communication back to iMIS through the marketplaces through our full suite of web services, which we'll go in here what those are exactly in a few minutes. Profile management tool. The profile management tool also uses those web services as well. Bridges of third-party applications, whether those are, GoToWebinar or Blue Sky Broadcast or Digitech. I think, Randy, what's the number now? 15, 20. So bridges. I won't rattle them all off. In fact, I think we may have them listed on this slide. And then, just to throw in, there's actually a bridge webinar that was done. The recording should be up on our website. You can check that out to see some lists. But those are all there as well. And so, again, that's something else where it becomes useful. If you're using, I'll use an example of GoToWebinar since that's what we're hosting our call on. GoToWebinar changes something. It changes the way their API works. We can update our web service, give you a new version of that web service, and now you don't need to worry about, what did GoToWebinar do? You let ATS's web services handle that. And also highly customized forms. And really, you could say, any other application you think of that you'd want to be able to do, to get data in and out of iMIS, the web services really are a player in that.
Yeah. One example we did recently is a client had an application form for people to join a prestigious program as part of the association. And while RISE, they are a RISE site, RISE just wasn't going to give them all the flexibility and workflow they wanted. A custom app was created using these web services to read and write things like multi-instance demographic tables and such back and forth into iMIS. I'll give you a little bit of feedback on what these web services are. They're a set of .NET SOAP-based web services, and they can be called with any programming language. You have people using PHP and Cold Fusion. In a .NET world, it's really quite easy to call these, but if you needed to do a post or a get, that could be done as well. In fact, we're working on a few prototypes of some applications where perhaps we're going to use Task Center, and we're going to post Task Center, and iMIS is going to call on these web services to create an activity record. And we're going to post to the web service with all the parameters and just do that in Task Center and have Task Center automatically create activity records. Those are some of the kind of ways that you can use it outside of a traditional build a .NET web-based application or console application. All the web services provide a success or failure response. Sometimes, no matter what we do, we just can't. iMIS is going to give us an error. Now, let's just say, for example, you say, go get product code, all the data about product code book 1, BOOK1. And let's say there is no product in iMIS called book 1. We will return back information that doesn't exist. Or let's say that we're saving a record, and you save a record with an invalid, you try to save it with an invalid state code of TT instead of TX. iMIS will reject that. The iMIS business objects will reject that and say that's an invalid state. We will bubble back that error to you so you can do something proactively with that error. There'll be a different error code and a message of what that error is. So that's a way that we provide some feedback to that. They can be locked down. You know, we recommend they're all locked down through IIS. You know, by restrict what IP addresses can connect to these. Many times people put these just inside their firewall, and that's the good thing about this model we talked about before. Your website can be outside the firewall or in your DMZ, contacting the data layer inside the DMZ, and that's all done over port. We recommend port 443 over HTTPS. It could be over port 80 as well, but in that way, you're never opening a hole in your firewall, you know, like you would have to if you had the IBO code out on your web server. You're not opening up a hole in your firewall. You're not having to open up port 1433. You're all doing this over secure port, over HTTPS, even if that's an internal certificate, and that way you can lock that down exactly who can access it. There's the ability in here as well on many of the functions to send an authentication token. So even if somebody was to break in through there, they would still have to have that authentication token, which is a key that you'd set up in the web config, a key that you would only know, and you could share that key. And this is a good way if you need to share something with an external set of developers. Let's say you got some external developers going to do some work against your dev database or something, and you want them and only them to have access to this. You can provide that authentication token to them, locked down to their IP addresses only, and give them an authentication token. That'll really help secure that data a lot better. Also, these are all licensed separately by suite, and I'll talk about what those different suites are in just a second. And they're right here. The main suites are the contact suite, and that is for that was a mistake. I was going to give it a little flair there. The contact suite is you know, everything about creating people records, updating addresses, getting data out of iMIS about contacts, user-defined fields, single instance demographics, multiple instance demographics, activity records, relationships, all that kind of thing, even lookup tables. I want to see what all the lookup tables are for prefix, so I can build a custom form to show me what the valid prefixes are. All that data comes out of the contacts web service. Under dues, those are the ability to get information about dues and dues products. For example, what are your main dues products? What are your miscellaneous products? What are your chapters? What's pricing on those? And then in your business layer, you can use that pricing to get and build your own screen if you wanted to, and then you can also pay some of these dues with both a join and a renew. Orders, that's everything about products. That would be everything from upsell, cross-sell, product images. All that data can come out to display products. If you just even want to highlight on your home page, build your own little custom widget that shows you the featured items. You could use web services to accomplish that. Advanced, the same thing. Everything about advanced. Is the function full? Is there a wait list? Who are the speakers, the bios, those kind of things, as well as register people for events. And donations includes the ability to get fundraising information, also the ability to process donations, including pledges and gifts. So you can do all that through this layer of web services. Again, these web services will then call the appropriate IBO or SOA web services underneath based on the version of iMIS you have to get the job done. Some of the individual pre-built web services that we also license separately are listed here. Probably many of you are using one or more of these products. These include anything from LMS webinar companies to social networking packages to external content management systems. And with these, they're all installed in one folder. I'll talk about that in a second. But if you have the web service today and you wanted to start using the Boxwood bridge, the Boxwood Web Services, then basically we give you a new license key. There's a general setup table, table setup in iMIS, and now you can have full two-way communication with Boxwood. these are using those same set of web services. So we sell them as suites, meaning, like I said, contacts, dues, events, orders, donations, where you can build your own app, or we have these pre-built ones where we have worked with every one of these vendors. We worked with CE City and Map Your Show and Scholar Lab and ReadyTalk and all these companies to find out what's the best optimized way to read back and forth between iMIS and their system. And many of these LMS, many of these, the reason I said they're pre-built, for example, Digital Ignite, you can buy a product in iMIS, and if this web service is installed, it will tell Digital Ignite when the person bought it. When the person completes the course, it writes back the credit hours into iMIS. So while you can build your own using these suites, we just want to let you know these are all pre-built, and I think we have 5 or 6 right now in production, and more ones to add to this list right now that aren't on this list. So if you have somebody that's on this list, that might be a better way to go than rolling your own web services, but that's always an option. Some example ways, again, we talked about a few examples before, but here's an example application development site. Like I said, this is what I would typically do if we got a call from a client. We'd create a .NET application in Visual Studio. We'd add a reference to the web services, create an object to the web services, create an object to hold the response, call the web service, and analyze the results. Now, that sounds pretty simple. I'm not going to get it. It's not a programming class here, but I can give you a little snippet here. Let's just say you have an ID number. This ID number, maybe that could be of the person logged into. I just happen to hardwire it to 101 here. I create an object for the web services. I create an object for the results, and I say results equal get contact iMIS ID. I'm going to get a result code back. In our code, anything with the result code of 0 worked. Anything without a code didn't work. So in this case, if I didn't get a result code of 0, I can redirect to a page maybe and spit out the error message. If it did work, which is the else down here, then I could make a string that says welcome message, welcome, and maybe your first name, like welcome Randy, exclamation point. So that's how easy it is to call these web services. Not only can you just get their first name, there's a whole slew of fields, and pretty much every field in iMIS is exposed and available. We'll show that in a second. In fact, you can go to our website at ATS website at www.atsol.org, and there are some demo calls available at demo.atsol.org/webservices. I'm going to hop over there just for a second to show you some of the flexibility here. I'm on this site. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Contacts Web Service. And underneath here, I can give you a sample of what the different kind of methods are that are available as part of this. And refresh in just a second here. But we got the Contacts Web Service, the dues, the events, fundraising, orders. We do have even, like I said, Drupal is one that we have listed here because we get a lot of requests about that. I'm going to go ahead and zoom this up a little bit so you can see. But let's just go down to the Get Contact method, as I said. And this is fully available for you to test yourself. It's a demo database that ATS provides. It's available through our website. And we can see here, Get Contact, we need to send it an ID number. And then we get back all of this data. So I can type in 101, and it's the demo iMIS database, and get all the data about ID 101. And with this, I'm going to get their addresses, their address purposes. I'm going to get, there's all their addresses up there. I got their billing category, their chapter, their company type. The code is CM, the description is company member. Pretty much every iMIS field that's in there, default addresses, et cetera, et cetera. So even the preferred bill address, preferred mail address. And again, we're just exposing what iMIS is exposing to us, but it makes it easy. So you can reference any one of these fields you want. Some of the other things include even the staff user. Are they a staff user or not? Their financial profile, things like that. We do encourage you, if you have any questions, to call us on this, but you can actually go in and make your own application on your server. These are wide open to the world, and go contact demo.atsol.org/webservices, and we could create our own app, and you could create an app and test to see how these web services work before you even buy them and apply them to your database. So that's a little bit about the application there. Let me jump back to this and get just a couple more slides. There's the sample results. I put them in the slides so that if anybody wants the slides, we've got them there. Licensing. As I mentioned, licensing is per suite. Currently, contacts, dues, orders, events, fundraising are $2,500 each. That includes maintenance for a year, And then any kind of upgrades, if you say, hey, we just upgraded to 20.2, give us a new copy, we'll get you a new copy. Any special things as far as installation, we would charge you on a time materials basis. Many of our clients are getting to the point where they can actually update these themselves. It's really just, if it's set up right the first time, it is pretty much a matter of backup what's in there and drag over the top new files.
Exactly, yes.
And it's really, really easy to upgrade from one version to another. The individual bridges to third parties are licensed separately. They're priced based on the number of iMIS users. Typically, those other ones like Blue Sky Broadcast, Real Magnet, etc., might range from $1,500 to $3,500. But again, they're pre-built, user's manual, installation guide, everything on those kind of bridges, that really can help people from having to roll their own. In addition, as Tim, I think, mentioned, if Blue Sky Broadcast changes, which they did recently, they have a new platform, they changed their API, we take care of all that work of making sure it works with that third-party application. Many of you see on this list are already licensed for the ATS Online Marketplace. If you are already licensed for those individual suites. For example, if you have the ATS Online Marketplace and you're using that to sell books, then you would already be licensed for contacts and orders. If you're doing membership, then you're already licensed for contacts, dues, and orders. That means you have full ability to use these today to do things outside the marketplace if you wanted to do that. As I mentioned, first year's included, year 2 and beyond is additional SU fee. It does include bug fixes and any kind of new methods, new functionality, as well as you can get any new version to match your iMIS version. Typical implementation can be scheduled in 1 to 2 weeks. The WSDLs are pretty complete, do include descriptions. We do say that we do recommend that if you're starting a new application, if you're writing your own new application, that you might want to reserve 4 hours just for us to help you call, or give you a little heads up on what to call. For example, if I want to place an order, what we would do is we'd say, well, let's create an order in iMIS so that it calculates the freight tax or web service for that. Then call web service to authorize a credit card. Then call web service to create a batch. Then call web service to place an order. Then call web service to delay and capture the card. So if you're building your own application, that can really help speed that up, that process up. I mean, typically we can have that conversation in 30 minutes and we're done. But we like to say record a little bit of time to help optimize your calls and whatnot. With that, that's the end of our presentation. Usually we have a question here. And if you have a question, please type that in. The question is, what's the benefit of using your web service instead of writing code to call the ASI web services directly? I would say that a couple things. Number one is we have seen the iMIS web services change with different versions of iMIS. We kind of abstract that so that you call our web service one time, one way, and then underlying it changes, however, underlying it calls the right ASI web service. I'll give you another example. I do not believe, now maybe out in 20.2, I haven't fully looked at 20.2, but I believe that ASI does not have, for example, the ability to create a relationship. I do not remember seeing a web service for that yet. It might be out there. So there's things like that where we've got a number of more methods to do a number of more things that the ASI web services don't do. An example, if I can go back to the website one more time here and show you one of these here. Let me go ahead and pull up the web service demo. I'm going to show you, for example, on the orders web service, we have some things like create a simple order. You simply pass order and order line to this web service, and it does all the work and gets your response back. So this method might call 10 web service methods or 10 IBO calls, or in case of SOA, you might have to make 10 SOA calls. This will do it all in one simple call. And we've got a lot of methods like that. Same thing with like get a batch. Just get a batch. What cash account? We're going to use cash account or Visa. You can make a mask. So that's one of the things that I know you can't do yet. Is let's say you want it called Internet. Internet dash YYMMDD. And then a description, Internet batch. I can hit invoke here. It's going to create a new batch in the database with exactly those parameters. So those are some of the things where we've kind of abstracted and made it a lot simpler by making one simple call with 2 or 3 parameters is a lot simpler than, at least to date, and more robust than calling the SOA web services in some areas. Now, you can absolutely do that. We are calling the IBO code. We are calling the SOA Web Services code. So all the logic we put into this get batch here and all these other methods in this function, you could rewrite yourself. I mean, that's exactly what we did. This is not SQL. This is not SQL inserts. This is not SQL stuff. It is using the IBOs and SOA Web Services, the best that we can, that they'll provide. So, just that get batch one, I would guess we probably have 30 hours, 40 hours in that project. And so when you look at the overall the cost of a web service, like $2,500 to just be done with it, sometimes people say that's better than me spending 20, 30, 40 hours trying to do what ATS did, and then, oh, when I upgrade to 20.2, it's broken. I have to rewrite it again. Those are some of the advantages we see of the web services. Are there any other questions right now? Any other questions? Any other comments on this?
So, Randy, how would someone request, I mean, we see this quite a bit, if someone says, I didn't see a vendor that we're using in your list of integrations or custom third-party web services that you've developed, how do associations request that, and can you kind of talk a little bit about the process? So someone says, we're working with Knowledge Factor, or we're working with, so-and-so, and it's really going to be expensive for us to integrate it. Can ATS do that for us?
Yeah, there's really 3 options on that, and all of them have different cost, risk, reward, benefits, of course. Let's say a client, let's say you have some vendor you're working with that wants something new, and again, we roll these out pretty darn quick. Your options are, number 1, give that client, that third-party company, access to your SQL server, and have them try to figure out it on their own. Number 2 is you write some kind of interface through stored procedures to get it to work. Both of those are fraught with peril as far as upgrading iMIS and, even in activity records. Data types have changed recently from double to decimal. And so if you had code that was written to look for doubles, that will now break when it upgrades to decimals. ATS has taken care of all that. We have abstracted that, so it doesn't matter what version of iMIS, it always works the same. But you could build that you build that yourself using SQL procedures, which is, I would never recommend that. The other would be to go learn and investigate how to use iMIS, SOA Web Services, or IBO calls on your own and incorporate and build your own application. Or if this is for one of those one-off bridges, give ATS a call, and typically for that price range I talked about, we can have that built and done, and a user's manual. And typically on those individual bridges like Digital Ignite and Blue Sky Broadcast GoToWebinar, we also throw in an SSO with that. So you don't only get just the web services, you get the single sign-on to go with that works with your iMIS login. But those are the kind of 3 levels. Again, we always recommend people, if you can do it out of the box, do it out of the box. Meaning if there's already a functionality built in, but most of these stuff we're talking about, these bridges, is not built-in functionality. And really by definition, if people use these web services, they're building something custom that iMIS doesn't do for them. We always recommend you look it out of the box. Some of the more challenging things that we've had to deal with is multi-instance demographic tables, and getting those reading and writing and updating row 7 of a multi-instance demographic table. The web service we have provide all that, so people don't have to reverse engineer, figure that all out all for yourselves. But contact ATS at either Tim or I, or at help@atsol.org, and we can provide any assistance and give you an estimate of what it would take, and even just to talk through how do you want to build your own project. I've got this idea for a project. You might say I've got this idea for the project that education department wants to put together to let people print out their own certificates of completion. We absolutely ourselves internally always use these web services because they're built. We can do rapid application development because we don't have to worry about all that underlying code to get that job done. Other questions or comments from anybody? Okay, Ben, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yep. No, it looks like we're up on time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have additional questions, as Randy said, you can send those directly to Tim or Randy, or go to our website, and there's a few links there where you can submit to help@atsol.org. Also, if you have suggestions, we develop our webinar series and schedule based upon feedback from our customers, from our conference attendees, from clients that we work with throughout the year. And so these sessions are based upon your requests. So if you have those, please don't hesitate to send those to us. Our upcoming next webinar will be next Wednesday, December 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and that's tracking advocacy engagement with CQ roll call and iMIS. This one is an interesting one. Here's an example of an integration that we built. We've worked with CQ roll call, who's been in business for over 25 years and been a market leader in grassroots advocacy solutions. We had a number of clients requesting this. So there's an example where we partnered with CQ roll call, built that integration. Now you can take advantage of using iMIS to seamlessly integrate these two, have your campaigns and everything done directly through iMIS. So, hopefully you'll be able to join us for that one next week. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to send those to us. Again, thank you for attending, and Tim and Randy, thank you both for your time.